On a storm-soaked night, a weary single dad stumbled upon a young woman lying in the rain, her blouse drenched in blood, her breath fading fast. With his feverish daughter waiting at home, he faced an unthinkable choice: walk away or risk everything to save a stranger. But what Jack Turner didn't know was that this single act of compassion would drag him into a world of ruthless power, buried secrets, and a courtroom battle that could tear his life apart. And the dying girl? She carried an identity that would shatter him to the core. The storm raged as if the sky itself wanted to swallow the city whole. Jack Turner pulled his hood tighter, his hands stained with grease from the long shift at the auto shop. The night smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and rust, the kind of scent that clung to him like his past. In his jacket pocket, the weight of his father's old wrench pressed against his ribs, a relic of a man who had taught him resilience before leaving him too soon. All he wanted was to get home to Emily, his little girl, who was feverish and waiting. The thought of her flushed cheeks and the faint scent of baby soap from her hair guided his every step. But fate rarely showed mercy. Ahead, beneath the flickering glow of a broken street lamp, he saw a figure collapse. A young woman, her white blouse quickly turning scarlet, lay on the wet pavement. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, mingling with the hiss of the rain. Jack froze, heart hammering. His eyes darted between the darkness, stretching back toward home, and the stranger dying at his feet. For a fleeting second, he considered walking away. Emily needed him. What if her fever spiked? What if she woke alone, frightened by the storm battering the windows? But the sound of the girl's broken breathing cut through his hesitation, like glass splintering in silence. Kneeling beside her, he caught the sharp, metallic tang of blood, mingling with the earthy musk of rain. "Stay with me," he whispered, though she could barely hear. Then he noticed something else: the lingering rumble of an engine nearby. Jack glanced up just in time to see a dark sedan parked across the street. Its headlights blinked once before the car screeched off, tires spraying water into the air. For an instant, he thought he saw a silhouette in the passenger seat, watching. A shiver ran down his spine. Whoever had been there wasn't trying to help. The fear in his chest mingled with anger. He wasn't supposed to be here, yet here he was. He slid his arms under the girl's limp body, the rain soaking through his shirt as he lifted her. She was frighteningly light, as if the storm might carry her away. Each step to his old pickup truck felt heavier than the last. As he laid her across the torn leather seat, thunder cracked above, and for a moment, he wondered if this was a sign that he had made the wrong choice. Driving through the storm was like navigating a battlefield. Windshield wipers smeared the rain more than they cleared it, and each flash of lightning revealed his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then the impossible happened. Headlights flared in his rearview mirror, the same dark sedan. Its engine roared, closing in. Jack's gut clenched. He pressed harder on the gas, the truck shuddering, coughing like an old man, but still pushing forward. The sedan stayed close, its beams cutting into his mirrors like blades. Jack swore under his breath. Whoever they were, they didn't want this girl reaching safety. His grip tightened around the wheel as he swerved sharply onto a side street, tires squealing. Emily's face appeared in his mind, her tiny voice whispering "Daddy" in the dark. He could not, would not, fail either of them. Rain hammered the roof like fists as he forced the truck toward the hospital. His heart raced, beating against the rhythm of the storm, a mixture of fear and defiance. For one terrifying moment, the truck skidded, nearly spinning into an oncoming lane. But Jack fought the wheel with everything he had, the wrench in his pocket digging into his side like a reminder to hold on. By some miracle, he pulled into the hospital's emergency entrance, brakes screaming, truck trembling to a stop. Nurses rushed forward, their faces shocked by the sight of the blood-soaked girl. Hands reached in, pulling her onto a gurney, voices echoing commands Jack barely understood. He stumbled after them, soaked to the bone, chest burning with exhaustion. As they wheeled her away into the sterile brightness, he caught one last glimpse of her pale face, lips parted as if she had tried to speak. Then the doors shut, leaving him alone in the fluorescent glare of the waiting room. Jack slumped into a chair, his pulse refusing to calm. He knew nothing about the girl, who she was, why someone had been watching. But deep down, he sensed this was only the beginning. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, the silence pressed even harder. And for the first time that night, Jack wondered if he had just saved a life, or stepped into a danger that could destroy his own. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, yet Jack could only taste the metallic fear clinging to his tongue. His shirt, still damp from the storm, clung to his skin, and the old wrench in his pocket felt like an anchor, dragging him back into memories he had fought hard to bury. He closed his eyes, and the sound of the rain outside blended into a flashback. The clang of factory machines, the roar of engines, the day everything had slipped through his fingers. Years ago, Jack had been more than just another mechanic. He had been the one people turned to when things broke, a problem solver with calloused hands and a stubborn heart. But when the accident happened at the plant, an accident caused by faulty equipment he had begged his superiors to fix, his world collapsed. Instead of acknowledging the truth, the company scapegoated him. The CEO himself had looked Jack in the eye and said, "We can't afford weakness." With those words, Jack was dismissed, stripped of his job and dignity. That was the day his wife left, unable to shoulder a life of uncertainty. That was the day he clutched the old wrench his father once used and swore he would fight for Emily, even if the world branded him a failure. He returned to the present with a shiver when the doors swung open. A tall woman in a gray suit walked in, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor like a gavel striking in judgment. Her expression was sharp, her eyes colder than the storm outside. She introduced herself curtly. "Miss Grant, the family's legal representative." She spoke of gratitude in words that carried no warmth, as though reading a line from a script. "The family appreciates your actions," she said, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. "But they also request that you refrain from further involvement." Jack frowned. She was bleeding to death. I wasn't thinking about involvement. I was saving a life. Ms. Grant's gaze didn't waver. And yet, stories have a way of spreading. We must protect her reputation and that of her family. Sign the document inside. It is a non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, you'll be compensated. Jack's chest tightened. He had seen paperwork like this before, back when the plant tried to bury the truth. What happens if I don't sign? Her lips curled slightly, the ghost of a smile that promised ruin. Then the narrative might change. Some might claim you caused her injuries. Some might even wonder if your daughter is safe in your care. At the mention of Emily, his fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. The wrench in his pocket pressed against his thigh, grounding him, reminding him of his father's voice. "Never let them take your soul, no matter what they steal." His anger boiled, but before he could speak, a weak voice drifted from the hallway. "He saved me!" Jack turned sharply. The girl lay on a stretcher, pale as porcelain, her eyes fluttering open for the first time. Though her voice was barely audible, the words carried undeniable truth. Ms. Grant stepped forward quickly, her tone softening in a way that seemed rehearsed. "You need rest. Don't strain yourself." But the girl's trembling hand reached toward Jack, her gaze locking with his as if to anchor herself to him. "You didn't let me die." Her eyes glistened, and for an instant, Jack thought he saw fear, not of him, but of something larger pressing in on her. Before she could say more, two men in dark suits pushed the stretcher down the hall, their presence heavy and suffocating. She was swallowed again by the sterile glow of the hospital corridors, leaving only silence behind. Jack sat frozen, his heart a storm of rage and confusion. Why did saving a life feel like stepping into a trap? Why did the mention of family and reputation carry the weight of threat more than gratitude. He refused to touch the envelope Ms. Grant had left on the table. Instead, he stared at it with the same defiance that once got him fired, the same defiance that kept Emily in his arms after court battles nearly tore her away. As the night deepened, he knew one truth: this wasn't over. The girl's fragile words echoed in his ears, confirmation that what he had done mattered. But beneath that, a shadow lingered. He sensed that her identity, carefully hidden, was the key to a storm even greater than the one still howling outside. Morning light bled through the blinds of the hospital waiting room, pale and unforgiving. Jack had dozed off in the chair, the wrench still heavy in his pocket, when he was shaken awake by a nurse. "She's asking for you," the nurse whispered, her tone almost conspiratorial. Jack's chest tightened as he followed her down the sterile hallway. The girl lay propped against pillows, her face no longer ghostly white but still fragile, like porcelain under strain. Her eyes searched for him with a mixture of relief and urgency. "My name is Anna," she said softly, her voice cracking. "Anna Whitmore." The name hit Jack like a blow. Whitmore, the CEO who had destroyed his livelihood, branded him a liability, left his family in ruins. Anna's trembling hands clenched the blanket. "You saved me, and now my father will destroy you for it." Her words were shards of truth, cutting deep. Jack stepped back, bile rising in his throat. Of all the strangers in the world, fate had placed in his arms the daughter of the man he despised most. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Two men in tailored suits entered, their presence suffocating. And behind them, Richard Whitmore himself. Age had sharpened rather than softened him. His silver hair gleamed, his suit impeccable, but his eyes were hard steel. He barely looked at his daughter before turning his glare on Jack. "You," Whitmore growled, the word like venom. "Always in the wrong place, always causing trouble. Did you think saving her would buy redemption?" Jack's fists tightened. "I didn't save her for you," he said, his voice steady though his insides burned. "I saved her because she was dying." Whitmore's laugh was bitter. "Or maybe because you saw an opportunity, and like you always do." Within days, the storm escalated. Papers were filed, accusations launched. Whitmore's lawyers claimed Jack had endangered Anna by moving her, that he had interfered with medical protocol, that his motives were opportunistic. Worse, whispers spread about his fitness as a father. Social services paid an unexpected visit to his small apartment, where Emily clung to him, sensing the weight of the threat looming over their fragile world. Jack turned to the only ally he could trust, a young lawyer named Daniel Ruiz, once an apprentice in Jack's garage, who remembered how Jack had taught him more than just machines. He had taught him integrity. Daniel agreed to represent him, though the odds were brutal. The trial came swiftly, a spectacle fueled by media whispers and Whitmore's influence. Inside the courtroom, every detail was sharpened by tension. The polished wood, the gavel's echo, the eyes of strangers passing judgment. Jack sat rigid, his old wrench tucked in his jacket pocket like a talisman, as if his father's spirit was beside him. Whitmore's attorneys painted him as reckless, unstable, a desperate man clinging to relevance. But Daniel countered with precision, unraveling inconsistencies, revealing evidence of a black car seen fleeing the scene, suggesting Anna's collapse was no accident, but an orchestrated attack by Whitmore's business rivals. Still, the weight of power leaned heavily. The turning point came unexpectedly. As the courtroom simmered with arguments, the doors creaked open. Emily, too young to understand the rules of decorum, slipped inside. She carried a crumpled piece of paper colored with wax crayons. Ignoring the gasps, she toddled straight to the judge, then to Whitmore himself, placing the paper in his lap. The drawing was simple. Stick figures holding hands, a smiling sun above them, and in the center, the words scrawled in a child's shaky hand, "Daddy is kind." The room fell silent. Whitmore stared at the drawing, his jaw tight, his eyes betraying a flicker of something human. Anna, seated nearby, let tears slip freely. "He risked everything to save me, Father," she whispered hoarsely. "Not because of who I am, but because it was the right thing to do." The judge's gavel struck, not with finality, but with clarity. The charges crumbled under the weight of truth. Jack was exonerated, his dignity intact, his guardianship over Emily reaffirmed. And Whitmore, though prideful, stood slowly, his voice breaking as he addressed Jack. "I misjudged you. Perhaps I've always misjudged men who refuse to bow." Jack met his eyes, the bitterness in his chest tempered by the sight of Emily beaming at him. He didn't need Whitmore's apology, but he accepted the moment as a fracture in the man's iron shell. Days later, when the storm had passed, Jack returned to the place where it had all begun. The rain-soaked street was now kissed by sunlight. At the edge of the pavement, a small wildflower had sprouted, defiant in its fragility, pushing through cracks in the concrete. He crouched down, Emily's hand in his, and watched it sway in the breeze. It was a symbol, quiet yet unshakable, hope reborn, justice claimed, and life enduring against all odds. Jack inhaled deeply, the scent of earth and promise filling his lungs. For the first time in years, he felt lighter, as if the weight of the wrench in his pocket was no longer just a burden, but a reminder that resilience could bloom even after the darkest storms. In the end, Jack's story is not just about a single night in the storm. It is about the courage to act when fear tells us to walk away, about resilience when the world tries to strip us of dignity, and about hope blooming even in the cracks of despair. His choice to save a stranger became the turning point that restored his own humanity, healed old wounds, and reminded us that justice and kindness are never wasted. If this story moved you, let it inspire you to stand strong in your own storms. Don't forget to subscribe for more soul-stirring tales and share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it.